I was just enjoying the quiet morning, sitting on the wooden steps of my lakeside cabin with a hot mug of black coffee in hand, when something felt off. The birds had stopped chirping. The wind had gone still. Then I saw them, two matte black SUVs creeping up the dirt road like predators in the wild. No markings, no sirens, and too clean for any local sheriff unit. They didn't belong here, and they definitely didn't know I was watching. I set my coffee down and picked up the binoculars I always kept near the door. I zoomed in on their plates, covered in mud. Deliberately. My instincts kicked in fast. This wasn't a friendly visit. And these weren't real cops. Two men stepped out of the SUVs. Tall, built, dressed in black tactical gear, but the kind you buy off eBay, not government-issued. One of them had a badge clipped on, but it was hanging lopsided, like he wasn't used to wearing it. No body cams. No radios. No coordination. Just two guys trying really hard to look official. They probably thought no one was here. That I was some dumb recluse or part-time vacationer who wouldn't be around. But I was very much here. And I wasn't alone. What they didn't know is that I used to be SWAT. 10 years in, 5 years leading a tactical unit, and I didn't retire, I just stopped wearing a uniform. The second I saw them approaching, I tapped the mic in my collar and spoke quietly, confirm eyes on two. Uniformed fakes. Breach imminent. Positions ready? Inside the cabin, my team, 3 of my old SWAT brothers, stood silently. Marcus, Jay, and Ron. We'd planned this for a week after I started receiving anonymous threats, strange surveillance drones flying over my cabin, and repeated violation letters from the HOA claiming I owed them fines for everything from my solar panels to the color of my roof. The problem? This area wasn't even under HOA control. They were making it up. And when I refused to bend or sell my land, they started escalating. But this? Sending fake cops to break in? This was bold. This was stupid. The man in front walked right up to my door and gave a single knock, sharp, aggressive. Then without pause, he kicked it open like he had a warrant. But he didn't. The wood splintered. He stepped in. And in less than 2 seconds, Marcus had him at gunpoint with a calm voice, "Don't move. Hands up. Identify yourself." The guy froze. His eyes went wide. He saw Marcus's real badge. Real weapon. Real authority. And more importantly, he saw the GoPro mounted on the wall, capturing every single move. He started to say something about a property inspection, but it was falling apart the second it left his lips. Marcus didn't even blink. Inspection? In full tactical gear? At 6 in the morning? No ID? No warrant? Outside, the second fake cop must have heard the noise. I saw him reach for his radio, but there was nothing. Just a prop. Then he bolted toward the SUV, trying to make a run for it. But Jay was already waiting behind the tree-line. Took him down clean, zip-tied, and cuffed before he even made it 5 steps. Back inside, the first guy was shaking. "I was told this place was abandoned," he said. "I swear, I was just told to check if it was secure." "By who?" Marcus asked. He hesitated. "The HOA, they said this cabin was condemned. That you were trespassing. Now that was rich. My name was on the deed. I owned the land. Not just the cabin. Not just the property line. The entire 40-acre parcel. Bought it with cash. Surveyed it. Fenced it. Registered it. All legal. And now the HOA was trying to call me the trespasser?" I stepped out from the woods and walked toward the porch. The guy's eyes widened when he saw me. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You," he muttered. "You're not supposed to be here." I gave a slight smirk. I live here. You're the one who's not supposed to be here. We brought them both inside and kept them calm, professional, and safe. No violence. Just firm handling. Because we already had everything we needed. Every move recorded. Every lie exposed. And trust me, I'd dealt with fake authority before. But this was a new kind of stupid. And behind it all? The HOA. A group of board members who thought they could intimidate me, push me out, and take the land for a development project I'd already rejected months ago. They offered me 7 figures to sell. I said no. So they tried to force me out. They didn't count on me still having access to my old team. Didn't count on me prepping surveillance. Didn't count on my history in tactical response. They thought I was just a quiet guy with a beard and a boat. They didn't realize I was 5 steps ahead before they even left their homes. As the sun rose over the lake and the fog started to clear, I stood on the porch again. My coffee was cold. But my mind was crystal clear. They wanted a fight. But they broke into the wrong cabin. The guy standing in my living room, hands zip-tied behind his back, kept shifting nervously as if he still thought there was a way out of this. His fake badge dangled from his chest like a toy from a dollar store. He kept mumbling excuses. I thought it was just an abandoned place. The HOA said we had legal access, we weren't going to do anything illegal. But every word out of his mouth dug the hole deeper. Marcus didn't say much. He just stood there, arms folded, calm and collected, letting the weight of the silence do all the talking. Jay returned from outside dragging the second guy by the elbow. This one wasn't so talkative. He looked like the type that had done this before, hired muscle. Probably not the first property he'd tried to inspect illegally. But this time, he wasn't breaking into a scared old widow's home or some vacation cabin no one would notice. He broke into mine. And we were ready. We sat them both down and began asking questions. Calm. Legal. We weren't holding them hostage. We told them they were free to leave if they could explain who they were, what they were doing here, and show valid ID. That's when things really started falling apart. Neither of them had any credentials. The first guy, Jason something, finally admitted he was a private security guard hired by the HOA to do routine compliance checks. But when asked if he had legal authorization or a warrant, he couldn't answer. His partner refused to say a word, but we found a burner phone in his jacket. No contacts, no call history, but the last number dialed matched the HOA president's office line, which I had on file. Got it from one of the letters they sent me weeks ago. At this point, Marcus activated the body cam footage on our end, clearly stating the date, time, and circumstances of the incident. Every second was recorded. Their entry. Their fake knock. The illegal kick of the door. Their lies. All of it. Then, as we began checking their vehicle, things got even more interesting. Ron opened the trunk of one of the SUVs and found a box labeled, Evidence, HOA Compliance. Inside? A bunch of random junk, plastic bags of mold samples, printed photos of broken fences, code violation slips already filled out with my name, and, most disturbing of all, an envelope with fake citations signed by a non-existent city inspector. They were going to plant fake evidence inside my home. Make it look like I was running an unsafe, abandoned, code-violating property. And then, I'm sure, they'd use those violations to get a court order to seize or condemn the cabin. The pieces were all coming together. And behind it all, pulling the strings, was that HOA president, Mrs. Valerie Kent. I remembered her well. She showed up at my cabin 6 months ago with a clipboard and a fake smile. Told me the community had concerns about how my property didn't match the HOA's aesthetic. I reminded her, politely, that this land wasn't even under their jurisdiction. The nearest official HOA boundary was nearly a mile away. My cabin was grandfathered in from an old plot of land, free and clear. She didn't like that answer. She came back 2 more times. Once with a contractor. Once with a man claiming to be a compliance officer, who I later discovered was her brother-in-law. They wanted me gone. And now it was clear, they were willing to commit crimes to make that happen. While Ron was photographing everything in the SUV, Jay checked the second vehicle. Same thing, forged documents, surveillance logs of my coming and going, notes about when I was usually out fishing or gone to town. They'd been watching me. Tracking me. Planning the break-in for weeks. But here's what they didn't know. Every inch of my property was under surveillance, real surveillance. Cameras hidden in trees. Motion sensors near the driveway. Even my mailbox had a wireless cam inside. I'd been preparing since the first threat. I knew they were planning something. And now they had walked right into it. We gathered the evidence, made full copies, and filed everything with our local sheriff's office. Sheriff Daniels had known me for years. Once he saw the footage and the forged documents, his face turned from surprise to fury. They impersonated officers, he asked, eyes locked on the screen. I nodded. Broke down my door, tried to plant fake evidence, and said they had HOA authorization. We'll handle it, he said. And I believed him. Within 24 hours, warrants were issued for Valerie Kent and 2 board members. Turns out, the HOA had been operating illegally for years, no proper filings, no real voting procedures, and hundreds of thousands missing from the so-called community fund. That money? Most of it went to contracted services like these fake inspections. We traced it. Followed the paper trail. They'd been doing this for a long time. Bullying people out of homes, threatening families, fabricating violations. And this time, they messed with the wrong guy. As for the 2 fake cops, they were arrested that evening and charged with trespassing, impersonating law enforcement, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted burglary. Their phones, their emails, everything was seized. And all of it pointed back to the HOA board. I watched it all unfold from my porch that night. Same porch. Same chair. Same coffee mug, this time refilled and hot. The cabin stood strong. The lake shimmered quietly under the stars. They tried to invade my space, ruin my home, strip away my rights. But instead, they triggered a chain of events that would expose the rot at the core of the HOA's operation. This wasn't over. Not yet. But they didn't just lose the battle. They lost the entire war before it even began. 2 days after the break-in, I received an anonymous envelope at my P.O. box. No return address. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance images of my cabin, aerial shots taken by a drone, and even one photo of me sitting on my porch. I flipped through them slowly, heart calm but jaw tight. The last photo in the stack was a printed screenshot of a group chat. 5 participants. Messages talking about final notice, forced action, and get it done before he files again. One of the names was V. Kent Admin. That confirmed it. Valerie Kent, president of the HOA, wasn't just involved, she was running the entire operation. I drove straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Daniels called in his cybercrime contact, and we began digging. Over the next 48 hours, it all started unraveling like a cheap sweater. Turns out, this wasn't their first rodeo. Valerie had orchestrated similar campaigns before. Fabricated code violations, planted evidence, threats sent to residents who refused to cooperate. The HOA had turned into a miniature mafia, hiding behind official-sounding paperwork and polished office spaces. People had been quietly selling their homes under pressure, thinking they were breaking the law when really they were being manipulated. But this time, she picked the wrong target. My land wasn't part of the HOA's designated area. I didn't sign any agreement. And I had spent the past few weeks collecting more than just video footage. My legal team, friends from my federal days, had helped me file preliminary motions, including a cease and desist, and had initiated a civil case for harassment and trespassing. But now, with criminal charges in play, things moved faster. Valerie was arrested during a surprise HOA board meeting. The news hit the local paper by noon: HOA president arrested for conspiracy, fraud, and criminal trespass. Cameras flashed, reporters screamed questions, but she just kept her head down, covering her face with a folder. I watched it live from my cabin TV. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just kept documenting. That evening, I got a call from a man named Tom Galloway. A retired vet who used to live 3 streets down from the HOA office. He said, "Son, I watched your cabin story unfold on the news. They did the same thing to me 5 years ago. They forced me to sell. Threatened to condemn my home over unapproved fencing. I lost everything." I asked him if he had documents. "I've got boxes," he said. "Come by any time." So I did. What I found was heartbreaking. Dozens of signed letters, all with HOA headers, claiming ridiculous violations: lawn too dry, bird feeder not authorized, fence color against community standards. Each one followed by final notice, and then a thinly veiled threat: failure to comply may result in legal seizure. And none of those homes were technically under the HOA zone. Just like mine. Valerie had made a habit out of strong-arming vulnerable residents, especially the elderly. I knew we couldn't let it slide. I connected Tom with my attorney. Then I reached out to 3 more families who came forward after seeing the news. One woman said Valerie's board claimed her front porch lights violated wildlife protection laws, and demanded a $1,200 fine. Another man said they blocked his driveway with cones for community roadwork until he sold his house. It wasn't just fraud. It was predatory abuse. I filed a class action suit on behalf of myself and the other victims. Over the next few weeks, the case gained traction. Local media picked it up. Then state outlets. Then national. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know, who was Valerie Kent, and how had she kept this hidden for so long? But the real turning point came when we subpoenaed the HOA's financial records. The numbers didn't lie. Nearly $800,000 had been funneled through bogus maintenance accounts over the past 4 years. Landscaping that was never done. Repairs that were never made. Security services, like the 2 men who broke into my cabin. The board tried to distance themselves from Valerie, claiming they didn't know, but digital signatures and emails told another story. The rot ran deep. The court froze the HOA's assets and appointed a temporary trustee. All board members were suspended. The HOA's office was shut down and padlocked. A judge declared the organization legally compromised and in violation of multiple statutes, pending full investigation. And as for my cabin? The judge ordered an immediate protective ruling. No HOA or related entity shall approach, contact, fine, or engage the landowner in any form. It was a small victory, but it felt like the first real moment of peace. I sat by the lake that evening. The same spot I always did. Coffee warm in my hand. Ducks gliding across the water. No noise. No tension. Just calm. But in that calm, there was power. Because what started as a shady attempt to scare me out of my cabin had become a movement. The media kept calling. A few state senators reached out, asking for statements. HOA abuse was nothing new, but no one had captured it this clearly before. They had underestimated me. Thought I'd panic. Thought I'd sell. Thought I'd roll over. But I didn't. Because I don't scare easy. And I don't give up land that I fought hard to build into a sanctuary. Not for anyone. Not ever. The court hearing was set for a Friday morning. The air was thick with tension as I walked into the courthouse wearing a plain shirt and jeans. No suit. No flashy watch. Just calm focus. I didn't come to impress. I came to finish this. The hallway outside the courtroom was packed. Reporters with cameras, former HOA members whispering nervously, and 3 families who had joined our class action lawsuit. I nodded to them as I walked by. They nodded back, some with quiet thanks in their eyes. Valerie Kent arrived 20 minutes later, surrounded by 2 attorneys and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Gone was the smug smile, the clipboard, the fake confidence. Now she was just another defendant hoping the system wouldn't crush her. But this time, the system wasn't blind. It had proof. Inside the courtroom, the judge, an older, no-nonsense man, got straight to the point. We are here today to determine the validity of criminal charges and civil damages regarding impersonation, property trespassing, fraudulent HOA conduct, and coercive land acquisition. Valerie's lawyer tried to argue that everything had been a misunderstanding. That the 2 men were simply contractors sent to perform a routine inspection. But then came the footage. We played the entire scene from start to finish. The SUV pulling up. The fake knock. The door kicked in. The moment my team intercepted them. The camera angle switched to the trunk, showing the forged citations, fake evidence packets, and the burner phone with direct links to Valerie's office line. The judge leaned forward and paused the footage. "Is that your client's voice, Ms. Kent?" he asked as a recorded voicemail played through the courtroom speakers. "Take care of it. He's not going to listen to letters. Do what needs to be done." She went pale. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge shut him down. Then we showed the HOA documents, the fake inspection orders, forged signatures, and the massive financial discrepancies pulled from their accounts. The courtroom stayed silent for most of it. Everyone was just watching, listening, absorbing how deeply this had gone. One family broke down in tears when the judge read their original property file aloud, stating it was never subject to HOA control, meaning their eviction had been entirely illegal. Then came my turn. I stood up, cleared my throat, and addressed the court. "I didn't ask for a fight," I said. "I didn't come here to win anything. I came here because I was hunted, harassed, and targeted by an organization that thought they were above the law. I came here because my home, my land, my peace, was nearly stolen. And if they did it to me, how many others did they scare into silence?" The judge looked directly at me and nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Darnell. You may sit." The ruling didn't take long. Valerie Kent and 2 other board members were found guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and impersonation-related charges. They were sentenced to house arrest pending further trials and ordered to pay restitution to every victim listed in our lawsuit. The HOA was officially disbanded by state order. Its assets were seized, and its records turned over for a full audit. And the best part? Every property wrongfully taken was to be reinvestigated for compensation, and in some cases, returned. As I stepped outside, the cameras came at me full force. "Mr. Darnell, how do you feel? Do you plan to sue for more damages? What would you say to other people dealing with HOA abuse?" I just raised my hand and said one sentence: document everything. And never back down. That night I returned home to the cabin. My team had gone back to their lives, but we still talked every week. Marcus called to say congratulations, Jay texted a fist bump emoji, and Ron just sent a picture of a campfire. I stood on the porch again, coffee warm in hand, staring out over the lake. The water was still. The trees swayed gently. It was over. For now. But part of me knew this story was bigger than just me. The video clips from the courtroom had gone viral. Millions watched them on social media. Comments poured in from people all over the country saying they'd been through the same thing: fake violations, late-night harassment, sudden legal notices with no warning. Some were older folks. Some were single parents. Some were just regular people trying to live in peace. They saw in my story what they couldn't say out loud in theirs. And that changed everything. Within a month, 2 other HOAs in nearby counties were placed under investigation. State legislators introduced a new bill, the Homeowner Protection Reform Act, that would place strict oversight on HOA actions, requiring verified jurisdiction, regular audits, and mandatory homeowner consent for major enforcement actions. My case was named in the opening statement of that bill. I never set out to be the face of a movement. I just wanted to protect what was mine. But sometimes, when you stand your ground, you unknowingly clear a path for others. My cabin is still there. Strong. Quiet. Peaceful. I rebuilt the front door, polished the floors, and added new locks, just in case. The birds came back. So did the ducks. And most importantly, so did my peace. And if anyone ever tries this again, I'll be ready. Not because I want revenge. But because now I know how many people are counting on someone to fight back when the powerful overreach. They came for me with fake cops, fake documents, and fake authority. But I met them with truth, proof, and the law. And in the end, truth won. It always does.